Hello there, this is H.J. Cronin, author of Crime, Horror and Fantasy, and this is my YouTube channel, The Facts of Fantasy. I'm currently here with the Geeks of Power, the panel of nerds and friends of mine to discuss the Rings of Power and to say what we thought of it, which prepare yourself for a lot of negativity for this show. We're all Tolkien fans, we all love it, yeah. So let's get into it.
I think Amazon has absolutely killed this series. I was apprehensive about it because of the marketing behind it was more about who they've hired rather than the actual show itself. And now watching it, I'm so disappointed. You know, they've got a world that is so rich with stories and characters and lore, and they've killed it. Numenor in every episode is just boring. It's so skippable. I don't know why this powerful island nation only has 5 ships. Like, come on, 5 ships. And, well, I think I've only got 3 left now and a few rowing boats. So by the end of episode 5, basically, cut a long story short, Galadriel has finally persuaded the Numenorians in 2.5 episodes, to join her fight on Middle-earth, where they've got no reason to go there. They've got literally no reason at all to go there. They're on their island. They're safe. They don't like elves, obviously. They've literally got no reason. And they're embarking on this armada, well, this raiding party to Middle-earth. And for what, you know? And whilst I'm talking about Numenorians, Galadriel bested 5 of them. She bested 5 of them in sword combat. Now, she's thousands of years old, so if a character in this is a warrior, she's going to be well versed and she's going to be formidable. But come on, these are Numenorians. They're a warrior caste, 8 foot tall soldiers, and she just made them look like chumps. And I don't know, I can really dissect this episode and go into it and go into what I really hate, but my whole summary is just no. The Harfoots I do not care about. Their story is terrible. They are awful people. Their leaders are absolutely awful. They're not hobbits. They never will be hobbits. Whether they are ancestors of hobbits or not, they're not hobbits. The whole story in the Southlands with Arondir, I was enjoying that, but now it's gone to a place of like silliness. You got 40 people or 20 people now defending a little tower against legions. I'm pretty sure he pluraled it, didn't he? Did he say legions?
Yeah, he said legions.
So we're expecting thousands of orcs to be attacking this little city, this little wall and tower. Like, I don't know, they're trying this epic thing and then it's just not working for me. Arondir is a character I like. That Bronwyn, who was a healer and now she's a leader, I don't understand the writing behind it. Numenor I've already spoken about, don't care. Now, bonus for me in this episode, something I did actually like was Jack's going to kill me for this. I like the Elrond and Durin.
Prince Durin.
Yeah, I'm just so lost in this Prince Durin when I thought Durin was meant to be the title of the king. But I actually quite like their little interaction and their chemistry on screen. I think it's quite fun to watch. Like the little prank he played with the table and the stone. I thought that was a cheap laugh. I quite enjoyed that. But that's a very, very small thing I liked about this episode. Amazon have fucked it. They've completely fucked it in my eyes. And I'm watching it because we're doing these episodes and I want to see where they go with it. And Balrog, they couldn't even be bothered to come up with a different Balrog. They used the same Balrog from the films. They couldn't even bother to design a different one. They've just taken designs from the films, and put their own little spin on it rather than making new things. And they all fucking look the same. All these people look the same. Oh, right. I'm going to let one of you go into it because I can just say no.
Back, Hamish. You know, why don't you tell us how you really feel? Well, can I tell you what I think of it? I mean,
yes.
Of this episode, because
yes.
I'm not going to give it like 10 out of 10. I'm not going to be a stan for like the series, absolutely not. But I am intrigued, and for flawed as this episode was, though it certainly made me a lot more intrigued as to see where it's going. I quite like the song by Norrie's friend, whose name I didn't write down. I quite like that.
The not Irish song, obviously.
The not Irish song of them travelling by map.
The purely fantasy and not reflective of the real world non-Irish song.
Yeah, I mean, I quite liked it. I thought it was going to be cringy, but I quite liked it.
It was good. I liked it, to be honest.
And also traveling by map, and I always like a good traveling by map scene, which is obviously the quickest way to travel. Traveling by dotted map, which is quite good fun. Now, the scene I was most intrigued by is the scene of the three women who are clearly meant to be evil, but who they're meant to be, looking at where the stranger fell from the sky. And there was some talk a while back that one of the characters was meant to be Sauron. I don't think they're meant to be. But it's played by Brody Sisson, who has these sort of very intense eyes, like the sort of buzz cut, and his sort of weird white robes. And they're clearly meant to be some kind of evil people, I think. And that was very intriguing. No dialogue at all. And at first I thought, oh, maybe they're meant to be, the sort of Nazgul, proto-Nazgul. But no, I don't think they're that. So I'm intrigued to see what part they play. But the Arandir, Ismail Cruz Cordova, is still excellent. Really, really liking his performance. He didn't get as much to do this episode, but still pretty good. The old sort of mannish Nazi, Waldreg, is like, what we should do? We should sign up with Sauron. He, and all that kind of stuff. So I quite enjoyed that. Played by Jeff Morrell. I thought his stuff was quite good. Because he's like the sort of the old school thing. I also like this thing about Halbrand's smithing skills. It's, I'll just knock you up a sword, and of course it's like this ridiculous sword. And this, the Numenorian smith is going, oh well, that's a bit good, mate. So yeah, quite enjoyed that sort of scene. The Galadriel fight scene. Yeah, I can see why you had problems with that, and I think it could have been choreographed a bit better. But dual wielding was quite fun to see.
Is there anything she can't do?
Yeah, she is a bit of a Mary Sue. Yeah, and again, the scenes that in Numenor are the weakest, definitely. But however, the intrigue with Pharazôn and his little lackey Merrin, I quite like that because he's got tremendous eyebrows as Pharazôn. That's Tristan Gravel. So I quite like that, and he's obviously evil because he has a special pile of maps. And that was quite good. The bit I didn't care for is where the stranger, who may or may not be Gandalf or maybe not be somebody else, freezes the water and blasts Nori. I thought that was a bit mean as a scene, to be honest. But again, still liking the actress who plays Nori, Markella Kavanagh, so quite liking that scene. And obviously you got to see more of Adar later on, being all evil and what have you. So yeah, there was bits to enjoy, I will say, and I'm still, it's still a sort of cruising between a six and a low 7 for me. It still make me want to watch more. To me, it's completely divorced from the lore, so I've moved on from that. I've just got over it. So yeah, it's got nothing to do with the lore. Just there's little hints and bits of it, but I'm not too fussed about that. I know you guys are very much more in depth with that, so I'm not trying to sort of rain on your parade or anything, but I'm just going to say, oh yeah, it's its own thing, fine. I'm just sort of watching it like that as a fantasy series. I'm hoping the intrigue will get a bit more interesting rather than just people being pure and having like courtroom discussions about lines of succession, which is the sort of the Phantom Menace type sort of curse. But as far as it went, I'm intrigued to see more. I think there's lots of different sort of parts moving, and I want to see where it's going. Hopefully, when the ships get from Numenor to Middle Earth, we might see a bit more stuff happening and some of the various plot threads meeting up. But yeah, I'm certainly not feeling the way you did, Hamish. I'm not sort of full of absolute hatred. Is it perfect? No. And it's, I'm not even going to attempt to compare it with Lord of the Rings or even The Hobbit for that matter. I'm just enjoying it kind of on its own terms. Yeah. I will say it's not good. It's not great. It's all right. I think that's all I can really say.
I think that's a very good summary, to be honest, Rich. I think it's very in-depth and very fair, to be honest. I think that, like the Stranger, I forgot to mention the Stranger, the mystery man. I think we've actually seen magic now. I'm quite happy we've seen magic, like when he thumped the wolves away and obviously of the ice to heal himself. Like, I thought that was, at least we've seen magic 5 episodes in, but still no mention of rings, Jack.
Yeah.
I'm unleashing you.
You're unleashing me. Right, okay. Right, well, I've tried so hard, especially as you know, my response to The Hobbit was, I've tried so hard with this series to be as positive as I can about the things that I like. And this episode has absolutely destroyed that. Absolutely beyond repair, I think. It's a solid 1 out of 10. Like, it's not ever going to get above a 3 out of 10 after what they've done. I'm not even joking. Even as a standalone series that wasn't linked to Tolkien in any way, the writing is atrocious. But I could let all of that go. But what they've done with Gil-galad has just shattered any positivity that I can feel about this at all. I mean, I'm furious. Like, my mates were like, you've been really, really positive about a lot of this. We were expecting you to unleash hell. And I was like, well, I'll give them time. You know, they're now 5 hours or 5 hours plus in. But what they've just done with Gil-galad in trying to get Elrond to break an oath is fucking disgusting. And I am beyond livid about how they've done that. You do not... Having the High King of the Noldor, who has lived through the War of the Wrath and the Oath of Fëanor, ask Elrond, who was raised by one of the people who swore the Oath of Fëanor, to break an oath is just canon and law-destroying gutter shite. It is absolutely disgraceful that they've done that. And I don't care for that plot line at all anymore. It's just solidified my position that elves are selfish wankers. And that's all they've done. They've just put that on screen for me now. And I hate it. The only thing I like about this whole series, this whole episode, that I've seen, is the interaction with Arondir and Theo, when Theo tells him he should have left, and he said, well, that he wanted to stay, and he said, well, half of us has just left, and he said, yeah, well, half of you stayed. I liked that bit. That bit was good. 50% okay with the Harfoots, but again, pointless. We're now adding in 3 more characters that are evil. Yeah, they haven't said anything, but I don't trust the writers to give them anything integral to say at all when they do actually come around to opening their mouths. Are we honestly expected to believe that mighty Numenor has existed for 2,000 years without a standing army that then needs to be taught how to fight by Galadriel? We really expected to believe that, and that they've only got 3 ships. So, yeah, storyline hollow as fuck, completely pointless in certain directions. What is the point in Aarion, this made-up daughter of Elendil? What is the actual point? She hasn't done anything or said anything. There is nothing worth hearing from her voice, because Kemin, who's actually the son of Ar-Pharazôn, the made-up son of Ar-Pharazôn, also has done barely anything except try to set fire to his ship, which Isildur has then protected him for. For what reason? He was trying to stow away to join on the ships, and he hasn't even grassed him up. So that doesn't make any sense.
That was a convenient shoe-in to get Isildur to go to Middle-earth, wasn't it?
It's just total fucking bollocks. And then you get Galadriel coming down to apologise to Halbrand for manipulating his storyline in front of Tar Miriel so that she could get her own way, and then manipulating him in the exact same way so she can get her own way out of him. So, you know, she's a toxic character. Hobbits are still psychopaths. Those 2 old crones that are constantly in Lenny Henry's ears. I mean, I hoped one of them was going to get eaten by a warg or a wolf. I mean, I was like, come on, something happened. You know, and again, the plot line, there's not been any food around here. We've never seen this little food while she's foraging a tree full of mushrooms. Yeah, we see a little bit of magic. Great, the stranger doing a little bit of magic. I quite like the stranger in general just because it's intriguing, but it's nothing to do with Tolkien. They've destroyed the lore. They've completely and utterly destroyed the lore. Gil-galad should be a lovable character who unites the people of the West to fight Sauron and would never in a million years ask anyone to break an oath. Not ever. That is sacrilege, what they have done there. That is utterly disgusting. And they haven't read the books properly or understood any of the messaging for them to actually have given that line to Gil-galad. It just... I can't believe that I'm not as angry at Galadriel this episode, and I'm more angry at Gil-galad. They have made the dwarfs into just gimmicks, just total gimmicks. Are we really expected to believe that Durin would actually sit at a table with high elven lords and then make up a sob story about dead dwarves, which they absolutely wouldn't do in any of the lore. They are extremely proud and guarded of their own history and their people. He would not do something like that to manipulate getting a free table. It's just more comic value that they add to dwarfs, and it just disrespects it so hard. And it's a 1 out of 10, and I'm almost close to now giving it a -5 out of 10. It's actually disgusting what they've done. I'm fucking furious. And breathe. But we can
You
now
done?
talk about other stuff a little bit calmer. But I am livid. I've tried so hard to interact positively and try and understand how Rings of Power have come about this, but this is a step way too far now. This is really also. So Glorfindel didn't kill the Balrog on top of the Misty Mountains because he did in the books, and then died himself, and then came back later on. So are we saying that Glorfindel didn't kill the Balrog because the Balrog somehow created Mithril out of a Silmaril? Like it's just fucking nonsense. There's no point in having that nonsense in there. It doesn't need to be in there at all.
I forgot the Mithril. I absolutely forgot to mention the fucking Mithril. But
I think that was the point. I was just like, no, I'm done.
Yeah,
I think we let Trevor take up on this bit.
yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
No, it's fine.
I mean, it's. I'm at that point where I'm going to watch the last 3 episodes purely out of loyalty to the world it's meant to be represented. But it's you know what? There's a scene in the Doors movie where sort of once Jim Morrison has gone off the rails a bit, their manager's saying, "I see Jim, I hear Jim, but I don't see. I'm not. It's not Jim." And it's just sort of this is Lord of the Rings in name alone. And with this episode in particular, it's not that they've not used the law; they've just thrown the law out the window and made up some stuff that doesn't make sense, and they've I would fully expect at this point that they have fully isolated Tolkien fans. I mean, I'm going to say all. I mean, because there's always going to be something. And I quite like it. And as has been said previously or earlier, it's just like if people are enjoying this show, kudos to them. I'm happy for them. I'm not in a stage of anger about it. I'm more disappointed because I suppose it hurts. And I'm disappointed because I so wanted this show to be a success. And it's just very, very poor. Tried saying earlier, this is a show that should be scoring goals left, right, and centre with everything it does in each episode. And yet all they're doing are scoring own goals. I took one positive from that episode, and that was when the Númenóreans came up onto the ship's deck to all stand there on guard. It was just like, oh, I like the way they got the horse manes, because that's like a nod to an early influence for Rohan. But that's essentially my take on the show, on that episode. And I think I'm being generous giving it a 3 out of 10.
I would just like to add, I do. If people enjoy it, I've said this from the start, but I will still say, if people are enjoying it, that's absolutely fine. If you're enjoying it and other people aren't, try and understand why other people aren't, because I can see why other people are enjoying this. I absolutely can, but I don't anymore enjoy this the way that I thought I was hoping to, that I really wanted to. And yeah, like Trev, I desperately wanted this to be a success, and I was terrified it wouldn't be. And I think people should try and understand why it is a lot of other people don't like it. And it isn't because they're misogynists or racists or any of those other stupid isms that you hear used and thrown at people that are being negative. It is because Tolkien's work means so much more to people than almost any other fantasy or science fiction or literature could ever mean. I mean, it really means so much more to so many people, and I'm a living testament to that, what it means to me and how personally I take it. and I understand exactly why people are upset when they see what they see, because I'm sort of starting to I'm falling into that category myself now. I also understand why people like it, and I hope that that they're enjoying it and it inspires them to read the books. But I kind of feel like if you end up going on to read the books after this, you'll be like, what the fuck did they do that for? Because so much of the messaging in the books has just been totally missed on this series. It's just gone. It isn't there.
No. And there's just the other thing. It's like you look at Return of the King as a book. There's like 200, like there's a good third of that book is lore. It's like nothing to do with the story. It's all the stuff that Tolkien created as lore. Genealogies to all the families, to the elven lines, to the kings of Numenor, and that, and it's just sort of, well, we don't care about that, and it's just the wanton abandonment or disrespect to everything that was created.
I've seen an argument online where people have been like, we can't know that Tolkien wouldn't have enjoyed this because he's dead. And I was like, I promise you, I would put all my money on it. He would not like this. He wouldn't have liked the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and Christopher Tolkien hated the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Both of them would not like this.
I imagine Tolkien was somebody who probably didn't even like television at all. Just anything on television.
Yeah, very much.
Well, I know that there was, in the 60s, the Beatles wanted to do Lord of the Rings, and Tolkien sort of flatlined that. It was like, no.
Well, I think he took one look at Yellow Submarine and went, "You fucking what?" But I was going to ask a question, Jack. I know that obviously you're very clear that you're not a fan and you're very, very upset by what's been done. But I was interested by what you said about you can see why some people might like it, and what is it that you see that even though you don't, you think, oh, I can see why somebody might. What is it that you're seeing there that you think appeals to some people?
Because of the visuals and because it's people in armor, and it is still set in a fantasy world. It isn't a fantasy world that I recognise very well as Middle Earth, but it's still a fantasy world, and people like that. People like that level of escapism. And as I said at the beginning, well, before we started recording, they've not targeted this at Tolkien fans. They've targeted this at a much wider audience. So they're soaking in a lot more positive reviews from people that aren't as grounded in the lore and haven't spent decades like I have or other people have reading the books over and over and over again, absorbing as much information about it as they can. And that's what I said from the start. That's fine, and I get that. But please don't ask or tell me to enjoy something just because other people do. I'll never enjoy something just because somebody else likes it. I'll like it for whether or not I like it, and I don't anymore. And that's a shame, because after the first two episodes, I was like, okay, well, they've made some changes, but they haven't got as much to go on. There's no actual storyline. They can't access the Silmarillion. They can't access Unfinished Tales. So yeah, there's going to have to be some changes. And I accepted straight away, because we all know how I reacted to The Hobbit with Tariel being created for absolutely no fucking reason. But
hashtag Team Tariel.
Yeah, but I mean, they might as well have just added in her as the main character to this, and I'd have been at least like, oh well, that's what she was doing until The Hobbit. Okay, fine.
Yeah,
but. I'm happy with. As I've said, I quite enjoy Arondir. I think he feels more like a Tolkien elf, definitely now more than Gil-galad does. That's for sure.
Yeah,
and
it's interesting that Arondir is, as far as I'm aware, is completely new character.
Absolutely, yeah.
And yet he's actually one of the strongest things in it. So so they could have had a 10 out of 10 if they literally just tweaked it a certain direction. But
it's very telling that when Morthith Clark was interviewed, she said, "Oh, people are either going to absolutely hate my character or they're going to love her," and that is terrible to hear that come from an actor when they're talking about a show that they know deep down people are not going to like this, or that a lot of people aren't going to like it, and a lot of people will. That's really worrying. And I didn't think about it at that time. I just saw her as, I actually thought that we'd see her in armor and stuff as just flashbacks from the First Age. I did not expect this. And again, I said it in the last podcast, but the visuals are stunning. But like, how long was it going to be stunning? Because it's now not carrying anything for me. My only positive takeaway really was the interaction between Arondir and Theo, who's turned out not to be a whingy little brat. But yeah, that whole made up section of this series is carrying it, and it has been now for 3 episodes.
Stunning visuals, and Howard Shore's theme. I mean, even Bear McCreary, who does the rest of the music, is a solid soundtrack provider, whatever composer. That does not make a show. I mean, it's that a lot of people have sort of. I've seen a lot of comments all that saying it looks fantastic, but it's just like it might look fantastic, but it has to have substance, and it's lacking substance.
I can't believe Gil Galad asked Elrond to break an oath. I can't believe it.
I know the thing is with me if you're gonna call it Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, you gotta at least respect the lore to some degree. And that doesn't mean just stealing names from the lore and making whatever characters you want with them. I mean, would this series be better if it was just all white men? No, it wouldn't. It's the writing, it's the characters. Like you said, Arondir is quite a likable character because he feels like an elf. He feels like he feels believable. Like you engrossed in what he's saying, and Adar as well. I think he's fantastic. I really like.
Certainly, the actor brings a nobility. He has definitely got that sort of bearing, and just the way that he holds himself is fantastic.
High elf. Yeah.
It's interesting to note that the people were concerned about casting non-Caucasian people of color and stuff, but actually, my view is actually some of the people who are giving the best performances are the people of color who have been cast in it. I think of Queen of Numenor, and I think of obviously.
I don't like her.
No, Tar Muriel she plays exceptionally well. From
I know
a
it's
lore
probably not very law accurate, but certainly her performance is pretty good.
She's not just. They haven't really done too much of her from a lore perspective, especially because in the lore that she doesn't interact with Galadriel. So you can only surmise or hypothesize what kind of conversations she would have had with Galadriel. I can't imagine she'd have had conversations like what we've seen. I'd imagine it would have been a little bit more politically kinder to one another. Especially Galadriel just would never storm into the middle of a high council room and start making all sorts of demands. But she's cast okay. There is an argument. There is an argument to be had about the diverse casting, but it's not one that that diversity doesn't belong in Tolkien's work. It's an absurd racist argument to have, and it is born of racism when you see people just saying that online, and they have been saying it online. I don't think it's as bad as Amazon has sort of blown it up in their own defence at all. I think there's been some questions raised about the context in which the cast is diverse. So I thought about it when we first talked about Disa. I thought, well, she can't be a long-beard. She must be another type of dwarf. She must be like a Fire Fist or a Broadbeam.
Well, she does have sort of sideburns, kind of, doesn't she? You see that in one or two shots.
Well, yeah, but what I'm talking about is that there are different types of dwarf in Tolkien's Legendarium. So that would how the context of where the diversity comes in. Like, for instance, Arondir we know is a Sylvan elf, and we know that that Gil Galad and Galadriel are Noldorin elves, and they're white, and Arondir is black or mixed race. So that's the context in which it is that I would sort of see where it fits in and where it differentiates. But to say that is what's anybody saying that diverse casting is ruining the show hasn't watched the show. It's because at the moment it's diverse casting that's holding the show up.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I meant. It's actually some of the best performances, and I know that none of you are fans of the Harfoots, but certainly, in terms of the performances, I mean, you could argue about the writing, but the actors doing what they can with the script stuff, I am enjoying what they're doing, and just the actual production design and the sort of clothing of theirs, I think is far better actually than the Numenorian stuff, which just seems far too clean. It looks like it's just, I think it was what was it you said, Hamish? The Playmobil. So we're going to call them the Playmobilorians from now on, or something.
Yeah. I think the diverse casting, I think that took a massive. They played a massive part in the marketing of this, which is what I don't like. I think it should just be, and we should enjoy it as it is, and that shouldn't even come into it. It was a huge part of the marketing, and that's because of some of the fans. and the cast as well. I really, really hope Arondir's story goes somewhere, especially with the key or whatever it might be. I'm really, really intrigued by the 3 priestesses that we saw 10 seconds of. I'm hoping that goes somewhere. So I think our last little segment, I'd like to try and put a positive spin on things, not on the show, but I'd like to
No,
go
I'm
around.
angry. We're burning this shit. Let's break it down.
It might be a bit of fun, but I think it would be good to how we'd rescue the show right now. How Rich, where you'd like to see it go, because you probably don't think it's rescuing as much as us.
I think it definitely needs some work, but I don't think it's a complete disaster the way that you do, and that's fine because certain things are. I think they're trying to do too much. I would have focused more on just 2 storylines. Say, for example, just Numenor and just the Harfoots, and to sort of you could have done a thing where you contrasted the leadership struggles of a small little tribe of nomadic hobbits with like the same leadership struggles of stuff going on in Numenor. And that would have been an interesting juxtaposition. And then season 2, then you start to bring in the dwarves and much more of the scope and gradually introduce different levels that way, rather than trying to introduce all of it at once. But that's what they've done. Interestingly, I mean, although I don't mind the actress who plays Galadriel, I personally would have cast somebody older, if you know what I mean, or certainly older looking, because I think she perhaps looks a little too young to be. I know obviously they're elves and they live for thousands of years or potentially forever, if they get enough mithril, to get the right hit or whatever. I don't know. Which I know that's rubbish. I know.
Total horse
I
shit.
know. I was just a sly dick there. I was.
That's quite insulting. That is.
So that's what I've done. But I as I say, I'm a big Hobbit fan, and the Harfoots are interesting and weird. I would like to see more of their culture, and to sort of the stranger coming in and him not understanding anything and say, well, this is what we do. This is how we do this, and just to see him being shown, so we would see through his eyes how the Harfoots live and what they do. Perhaps a bit more. I would have liked to see more of that, and how they prepare food and how they live and how they carry stuff around and why are they nomadic. That would have been interesting, to have like a little. I mean, it would have been completely. They could have gone absolutely crazy with that because the actual early history of the Hobbits is completely shrouded in mystery. So they could have made up some lore from scratch, then, couldn't they? And that wouldn't have contravened anything because it's all very vague and mysterious. Having read all the, as much sort of lore and spin-off non-canon stuff as I can, it does get a bit murky, past a certain point. So they could have really absolutely invented like a backstory there that would have been fun. I think it's weird because some of the CGI has been phenomenal and some of it's been a bit So, me personally, I would have tried to hire literally as many people as possible from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Just spent the money on them. Just get the best people. And got Howard Shaw and all that, because that would have been a nice bridge. But maybe those people are too expensive now. I don't know. So, but that's kind of what I would have done, and perhaps made the dwarves less caricatures, perhaps. But that's the way because they haven't made the elves caricatures, but they made the dwarves caricatures, which I think I would have liked to see them perhaps less sort of less comedic.
They've made the elves total naive fool, but just totally naive and stupid and reactionary. There's no wisdom in them at all.
Yeah. I think I would have liked the Harfoots to come in as sort of like just a one episode thing, just as a nod to the Hobbits as they wanted to do. Like on a journey they pass through and they have to get sort of hospitality from them or something like that. I think that would have been just enough. I really hope Galadriel, because they've signed off for 5 series, haven't they? And they've already started with series 2, haven't they? Am I correct in that?
That means they've already written. Yeah, it means they've already written the script. So expect more of this shit.
I don't think there's much that can rescue the series for me, but I would really like to see the end of series 1. The good guys lose whatever battle they're going to do, and lose really bad, and Galadriel's humbled, massively. I think that would take me away from feeling how much I dislike this and just turn it into another fantasy adventure for me that I can hopefully get into. I want to see the good guys lose. I want to see the dwarves actually become badasses and lose that comedic sort of value. The laugh was a much needed distraction. I'd love to see Halbrand. I'd love to see what his story is, because me and Jack spoke the other day. I find him very, very interesting, and he's the only secretive. Like, he's very secretive, I find, and I'd like to see where he goes. I'd also like to feel more of a threat from Sauron, because there's not been any sort of inclination that Sauron's hiding or playing politics or anything really. I would really like to see some of that. Like sort of, we don't know who he is, who he's meant to be at the moment, because obviously they fucked the law. But I would like to see more sort of intrigue rather than off-screen stuff. Who do we have left? The Stranger? I don't know. I hope it's not Gandalf. I hope they just make up another character and he's compelling and there's something about him that's good. And it's something to do with the priestesses, maybe like a nemesis or an opposite. I hope they do something decent with that. But mainly I hope Galadriel goes for a huge character turnaround and she's humbled and she stops being such an evil, twisted, manipulative bitch. I can't stand her. I've seen her on the screen now and I just can't stand her.
It's almost as if she didn't witness the entire of the First Age, is it?
It's almost as if she's like a child and she hasn't got a clue about anything and she's just acting on emotion rather than wisdom. There's no wisdom there whatsoever. This isn't the same Galadriel that the Fellowship meet in Lothlorien. It's just right. So Jack or Trevor? Trevor, what would you do to sort it?
What would I do to sort it? I'd walk away. They've made such a car crash of it. I mean, I'll be interested to see once the finale is aired, and before season 2 is filmed, or if they're filming it now, if it finishes film, I'd be interested to see which actors jump ship if they can. Obviously, I know sort of they tie actors into contracts to do sort of a certain amount of series and that. I mean, I would say to some extent, I don't know Morfydd Clark from any previous work, but I would say I am concerned for her because of the backlash she's probably going to get, because a lot of people cannot differentiate between the character they play and the actor or the actress. Just like with Lena Headey in Game of Thrones, it's just like at conventions, she was the person that got the least sort of fans going up to what sort of want to take photos with her or get her autograph because she was Cersei, and it's just like, well, that's the character, not the actress. Like the guy who played Joffrey. I mean, he was a brilliant bad guy, but we knew he was an arsehole. But I would not treat the actor the same way, because I can differentiate between someone playing a part and someone being a human being. I mean, I sort of said earlier, Amazon are not going to admit to anything or acknowledge anything probably until the finale is aired. And even then, they might not admit that they've made any mistakes. I don't know. I mean, I think it would have to start at admitting you fucked it, and then I really don't know how you would bring this back around to even moving towards lining up with stuff in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, in sort of a visual media. I mean, I can't even see it connecting to sort of the Peter Jackson films in any way, or even the Tolkien books. It's just it's. I mean, I suppose I would say it's very very vogue at the moment to talk about multiverses, and all I'm really looking at this is a multiverse version of Middle Earth, where Galadriel is just horrible and nothing like Galadriel, and the same for a lot of the established characters. And honestly, I other than doing a Pam Ewing waking up or being in the shower, waking up, and it's like sort of the last sort of few years of Dallas have just all been a dream. I mean, it's just sort of. I think if they tried to put it back on course, it will still be a car crash moving back on course, because you can't erase it. It's done. They've made the mistake. They've isolated sort of the people who are Tolkien fans. If I had the rights to Lord of the Rings, I mean, I don't know if it's still Saul's Sense or the Tolkien estate or whatever, I would intervene and say, no, stop. This isn't Lord of the Rings. Just go home. I mean, you talk about the money they've spent. I mean, I was joking about it in the last podcast about the Blue Harvest effect, and it's just like, where has all this money gone? Peter Jackson made the Lord of the Rings trilogy on shoestring budget. He pretty much did what George Lucas did, which was just like, well, we ain't got the technology, so we're going to create it, or we're going to work sort of 20 hours out of every day, making the costumes, putting in all the effort on a really tight deadline where it just involved absolute creativity. And I let me say this now as well. I know he changed things. That's one of the other things I'm seeing as like a defense against Rings of Power. It's just like, well, Peter Jackson changed things. And it's just like, yeah, Peter Jackson changed things, but for the most part, he stayed in theme. I mean, I'd be the first to say I dislike the change to Aragorn's story. You don't need to change Aragorn's story. But I understand for an audience, for a cinematic experience, making him a reluctant king was far better than being one who's just like, yeah, well, I want to be king. I get that. And someone sort of said, well, the elves turning up at Helm's Deep. That doesn't happen in the book. Yeah, I know that doesn't happen in the book. Help does come along. The Grey Company turn up. Elrond's sons turn up and fight. So it's just a variation, and it's just sort of not introducing
That's
too
after
many
Helm's Deep.
characters.
The Grey Company come
Sorry?
after Helm's Deep. They fight at Minas Tirith.
No, I can't remember.
It's Erkenbrand. It's Erkenbrand who turns up. AMF fights on the walls.
Does he? I don't think it does, because it's not until the Pelennor Fields that Aragorn and Éomer finally draw swords together. Because that's always been one of the scenes I was hoping to have seen.
I'm pretty sure AMF fights at Helm's Deep, and it's Erkenbrand who turns up with the cavalry.
Oh, well, there's my sort of gap in my lore then. But
sorry.
I think it's just that sort of Peter Jackson changed things, but they weren't heinous change. I mean, The Hobbit, yes, I think there's things where you can argue and debate, and I've probably not heard you properly go on a rant about The Hobbit, Jack.
You haven't.
But I'm kind of with you, because I was like it with Desolation of Smaug. It's just like, the dwarves never fight Smaug. What's this madness?
We will do the Hobbit reviews eventually, and I will actually go through exactly what it is I hate about the Hobbit.
But I was able to disconnect and go, I can enjoy this. It was enjoyable once I got over myself. But the Rings of Power has gone too far on its law breaking. So I don't know how I would save it, because I don't see that there's any saving for it. It would be better to just cancel it, in my opinion. I'm sad to say that, because I do want it to succeed. I did want it to succeed. But they've made such a aberration of it. It's Amazon are getting the criticism they deserve. I'm not enjoying it. However, maybe I'll be surprised. This feels like I'm on the receiving end of a toxic relationship.
I think it's a respect thing, isn't it? Where Peter Jackson comes in, you feel like he respected the law and it flowed and everything like that. It was a good story. Amazon clearly don't respect it, and they're producing in interviews that they don't care. So, Jack.
Okay. Right. How do they save this? Dream sequence it and just retcon the whole of season 1, and just have Galadriel suddenly waking up or sticking her head out of that mirror that she's got in the Fellowship and say, "I have seen things," and then start implementing changes around Middle Earth that get them ready for a war with Sauron, and that's it. I did write a little list of things earlier on that I would change if I could go back, and if I had the access to the scripts beforehand. What are the things that I would have said, which is stop the dwarves wearing togas, give Gil-galad an actual personality, get rid of Aarion, who so far has done absolutely nothing, call Isildur the whole time, give Disa a beard, replace Prince Durin with Na'vi, send Celebrimbor to Moria, and focus on his friendship with Na'vi. Do not teach Númenóreans to fight because they already know how. Get rid of the Balrog. Do not give Halbrand the stupid title of the exiled heir to the throne of the Southlands because it sounds fucking stupid. Stop the half-wits being psychopathic, gimmicky Irish people. Cast all Númenóreans as 6 foot bare minimum and buy Morphin Clark some stilts, and give Arondir his own spin-off series. Just the Adventures of Arondir and a totally made-up place with zero canon characters. That's how I do it. I can't, but I just can't. I didn't think. I thought after episode 4 we could just laugh at this and we were sort of just nitpicking things and having fun. But now it's like there isn't a way, as Trevor said, there is no way to move forward in from what they've done. What they've changed there with the elves and the Mithril story is massive for me. It's absolutely massive. And I was really enjoying the dwarf story to a degree. I don't know how you change this. I never would have. If you'd have asked me to write a Lord of the Rings story for TV that was going to be a series, I wouldn't have tried to do the whole Second Age. I just would never have. That would never have occurred to me. And if I had,
You've got
if they had,
5 seasons. So why cram so many things into a first season?
well,
Oh,
if you spend 250 million on an IP, surely you've got to think we can't muck this up from a business perspective. You've got to be like, right, then we're going to have to invest in a serious writing team. And what you do is you get a writing team together and you say, look, we're going to pay you X amount a year. You've got 5 years to write up a proper story off of everything you've read about Tolkien and what you can and cannot add into this story based on what rights we've got. And then you get people like Tom Shippey to come in and read the script, proofread it. This hasn't been proofread at all. And they're already going to be filming season 2. So they've already written the script, which means that they already think that the script and the writing for series 1 is okay. And it's not. My dad said to me at the weekend, he said, I told him about everything and he was like, wow, okay, well, you've just got to look at it as this isn't Tolkien, this isn't Middle-earth, and just try and enjoy it as a fantasy. So I watched it. I watched it again when I got home from camping, and nope, just no. It doesn't. I try. It's like when I tried watching Wheel of Time. Everybody was whinging and moaning about what they'd done to Wheel of Time, and I thought, well, I haven't read Wheel of Time, so I don't really know anything about it. I tried to watch it. I can't get through the first episode, so
wow.
it's
I haven't
bad.
even
It's bad, right?
watched it myself, so.
Yeah, it's bad writing. I'm really jealous that everyone's watching House of the Dragon because everyone's saying how great it is, and
Yeah.
I haven't got access to it. So, yeah, and I just wouldn't change. I wouldn't have done it like this. I wouldn't have condensed it the way they had done. Maybe they should have done maybe just focus on one series with the elves and some crossover with the dwarves, and then one series with Numenor, and then one series with a couple of other things like Arondir over in the south, and then then you've got 3 seasons of them sort of setting it up for each race, and then you have 2 seasons of where it all starts to collide. Maybe that would have worked more efficiently. The fact that there's so many things going on behind the scenes that you don't see that we just expected to know is again exemplary of really poor writing. I despise it whenever they turn dwarves into just gimmicky comic relief characters, and they've done this with Durin again. Yeah, it's just been sheer arrogance from Amazon when they've come into this just thinking they've bought the most highly sought after IP, the very, very premium crust of fantasy, the godfather of high fantasy literature, sorry, and they've just fucked it. And I can't not be angry anymore. I'll calm down, but it's taken me 10 years to try and get over The Hobbit, and the only thing that's got me over The Hobbit is this. So we may be in for a long 10 years, mate.
One of the things you just said, it just reminded me. I just picture that sort of. I'm not a teacher, but I imagine this. This is how it feels: is when you're a teacher and kids have meant to have done their homework or have done a test, and it's just like you got 2 out of 10 because you did not do your homework, did you? It's just sort of. Oh, I was trying to express sort of over the past week. It's almost depressing how they've scored such an own goal with this rich world and this rich history. I'm so disappointed.
It's just how have they managed to wrangle it so that elves diminish into nothing without Mithril? Look, the whole point of why they can't go back to Valinor is, and they left Valinor and they're diminishing anyway because they left Valinor. And now they're going, well, we'll have to leave these shores by spring. But you're not allowed to go back. You're not welcome back to Valinor. You're banned because you rebelled against the gods, against the Valar, and deliberately disobeyed them to go to war in Beleriand. So they can't even go back. And why by spring? What happens in spring? The tree dies? What tree is this? It's just the tree that you see in the meeting area at the beginning in the first episode. No backstory as to why that suddenly gives them immortality, because they're not given immortality by trees. That's why they're just usurping the tree motif that Tolkien is really into, and they're just being like, well, okay, it's the tree that gives them immortality. Like, fuck is it? If it was the tree that gave them immortality, Morgoth would have found that tree and destroyed it in the first age.
They're misrepresenting what actually elves see, which is obviously stuff around them withers and dies, and that's including their work, and that's what they want to preserve. Like, that's why the rings are created, not this sort of, oh, we're dying. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yes, elves do get sad and wither.
Yeah, Miriel.
Yeah, it's like even Celebrian, who would have been a great protagonist instead of Galadriel. It's just like that's her whole thing. Once after she gets captured by all, just that sort of elves get sad and die, or need to sail west. Bring that around in the right way, not this. Oh.
Apart from anger, I don't really feel anything now about this. I don't feel optimistic. I don't have any optimism now for the next 3. Is it 3 or 2? 3 episodes. I just don't. That came so far out of left field. That whole bit with the elves and the mithril. Like when I saw that that moment with them at the table. We got we got shots of that a couple of episodes back. We're like, oh, at some point they're all going to sit down to dinner at the table. I had no idea that scene was going to be so poorly written, or just like you'd have thought you'd have got some decent dialogue between them, not basically Durin saying it takes you weeks to decide to take a shit. By the way, I really like this table, but you've made it out of the stuff we bury our fallen glorious dead in, which actually turned out to be just a lie. I thought that I've talked about anything other than that, a bit more like dwarf elf politics, maybe even some lore about discussions and things that have happened in the past. None of that at all. And that just seems like a wasted sequence and a wasted opportunity to have Durin and Gil-galad and Celebrimbor and Elrond at the table with some mysterious elves and apparently no other dwarf lords. And then they end that interaction with Durin talking to Elrond and going, right, it's a long walk home. And then they start walking out of Lindon. Like, really? That's months worth of walking. Months and months.
Yeah. I mean, really, that sort of meeting of those characters should have been like all the hype that was when all the characters in Game of Thrones met at the end of, was it season 7 at the Dragon Pit, where it's just like, oh, we've got like 30 of all the main characters in one location. It's just like, it should almost have had that sort of vibe, really.
Yeah, instead we got Durin nearly swearing. So yeah, I would sack the writing team. I would postpone season 2 for years and see if they can save it. And if they can't, I'd scrap it and then be like, okay, we're going to come back in a couple of years' time. And you can still have Galadriel being a super awesome kick-ass fighter and you can still have strong female characters and diverse cast, and you can still have all of those things that make things really good, that make series really good, but you have better writing and better storytelling, because that's what this needs, because they've just expected it to write itself because people love it because it's Lord of the Rings, and what they're realizing is actually Lord of the Rings fans or people that are really into Tolkien, like really, really into Tolkien, are probably going to be a little bit harder to please than just what they see on screen. And they should have learned that from watching the way people reacted to Game of Thrones, because just general audiences reacted to Game of Thrones as if it was a masterpiece, because it is. So they should have treated Tolkien's work with the same level of respect, instead of thinking that it's either too complex for the general audience, because it isn't, and that you can tell it in a way that makes it a lot easier for people to digest if you're smart and if you have the right people doing it. And if you have to pay for the best in class, you've already spent 250 million on the IP, so you might as well pay for the best in class, because you're Amazon and you're multi-billion-dollar company that has all the money in the world to throw at things and treats its staff like shit and makes everybody work through slave labor conditions anyway. So why should they care what money they spend?
I mean, the
Anyway,
show was delayed airing, wasn't it? Not just
oh,
because
was
of
it?
COVID. I think so. I mean, it was spent a lot of time in sort of production, didn't it, or post production. I got
See, I thought that was development hell. There was sort of like there was multiple writers and people involved, and people left, and there was an awful lot of. I remember, wasn't there some? I'm sure Jack, you mentioned that in one of the previous things we did about there's been directors
they changed the direction of this once Christopher Tolkien died, and
right, that was it. Yeah,
but Christopher Tolkien, I think they sold the rights on the condition that Peter Jackson was not allowed to be involved, because Christopher Tolkien hated what Peter Jackson did with the trilogies.
right.
But I don't think he had any idea this is what would happen, because I've seen the OneRing.net make claims, very disingenuous claims, because they're shilling, and I don't really want to use that term because it's kind of used by all the people that ultimately hate this series and hated it before giving it a chance. But the OneRing.net have shilled for this series so hard that they even said Rings of Power is Christopher Tolkien's legacy. And I thought, that is a really, really snidey, disingenuous thing to say, because this is not his legacy. His books that he lovingly spent and dedicated his life to translating from his father's notes so that people could read them and learn more about the wonderful world that he created. That's Christopher Tolkien's legacy, not this.
Yeah.
And there's one more still to come out, isn't there?
Yeah. And then and that's The Fall of Numenor. That comes out next month, and I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, so we're seeing that, and again, yeah, Trev, you touched on that with the criticism of everybody going, well, if you don't like this, and you'll hate when you find out what Peter Jackson did to the trilogy. Yeah, we know, mate. No, that's not aimed at you. Sorry, that's aimed at the people that say it. It's like, yeah, mate, we know what they did, and as you said, Trev, we know that they made changes. They put elves in at Helm's Deep. We know that they changed Aragorn and Faramir. We know that they've changed Frodo's character arcs a little bit. We know that they shoehorned Arwen in and got rid of Glorfindel. We know all of that. We nitpicked it at the time. We would have changed it back then ourselves as well. But just because we like the Lord of the Rings trilogy that Peter Jackson made doesn't mean we automatically have to like the Rings of Power because they've made changes too. Because they haven't gone about it with the same level of appreciation that Peter Jackson did. None of their interviews in the run-up to this production has given anybody any sense of comfort that they're going to do the right thing, except for all the people that they invited to that castle to see the first 2 episodes first and get to meet the cast after getting 3 days of being wined and dined by them, who all came out with fantastic YouTube videos because they were bribed. Because that's exactly how I would have reacted if I was bribed. I'm fickle enough to know that about myself, that if I'd have got given exclusive access to the Eagle and Child and given all this free merchandise and then told what's your opinion on it now you've seen it, I'd have been like, yeah, this is great. You know, they can list things that have happened in all the books off the top of their minds. They're the best people to take it forward. I'm yet to see anything that gives me any encouragement that they can actually take this forward and convert anything Tolkien's written to something that I can recognise on screen like Peter Jackson did. And they won't now, I don't think. I think I'm done with it. I think I'll watch series 1 or season 1, and then I think I'll be done with it. I don't think I'm going to stick around for season 2. It's going to be very much like the Vikings.
I think that's very fair enough. I really like, because obviously I'm coming in from Lord of the Rings books and the films, so I feel really sorry for those who are so like well versed the lore and like the Silmarillion and all that sort of stuff. And I feel so bad that this is what you've got, you know. they've got the whole thing in their hands, and this is what they've done. I think to close off, I'd like Rich to put some sort of positive spin and a bit of hope.
Well, as I say, I'm not trying to sort of sell it as this is a perfect sort of thing that's sort of improving, or this is not Christopher Tolkien's legacy. That's a ridiculous thing to say, and absolutely not true at all. I am surprised that he didn't care for the Peter Jackson films, but he, for whatever reason, I've spoken to old veteran sort of like Tolkien fans who absolutely despise the movies as well. So that is a view that's out there. But on a positive note, there is little bits to enjoy in this. I will say, I know that you guys can't stand all of it, and I understand that. I'm not trying to dismiss your opinions, but I'm liking the evil characters in this. I'm liking those mysterious priestesses. I'm liking Adar. I'm liking, the old sort of nasty sort of guy in the village. I'm liking that. So, and I think the costumes of the orcs are fantastic and not quite as silly. And I'm going to say that. So some of the appearances of the orcs in Lord of the Rings trilogy were a bit over the top. I mean, yes, they served a purpose and what have you, but I think these feel much more lived in sort of ragged costumes, and I really like that there. And I think I'm intrigued to see more about Adar. And certainly, the actor's performance is really good. So I'm actually enjoying the bad guy plot lines a lot more. That's what's making me want to watch more of it. And obviously the Halfwoods, but I know you guys can't stand them. But I'm just intrigued because I'm a big fan of Hobbits, just in general. So yes, I want to see more Adar. And if we can see another scene where Adar and and Arondir have a conversation, that would be interesting. And if we can get some Adar backstory, and that was interesting, where he sort of. So yes, that's what I'm enjoying more. So yeah, I'd like to see that. Maybe see more of actually Farazon. I know that's probably controversial, but he was, at least because his performance was really good, about a guy who sort of do some behind the scenes sort of intrigue. And I think they should have put more of that in. Which that would have added a bit more depth and sort of like background into the sort of the court politics of Numenor. For all it's meant to be paradise, there's always going to be intrigue, even in the best sort of places. So that's what I would like to see, a bit more of that. And so hopefully we'll see a bit more of that. What I suspect they'll do, because the backlash has been so severe and so brutal against it, I suspect they will probably condense it from 5 to maybe 2 or 3 series. I suspect they'll probably do that. Or then put a pause, or do 2 series and then say, oh, the next series will be set so many 100 years afterwards, or something like that, which will give them the excuse to rejig the series without admitting that they messed it up. I think
I think the Tolkien estate actually said it needs to be at least 5 seasons.
Oh yeah, it will be, but I think they'll find some way to have a time jump or a tone shift or something. That's if I was brought in now as showrunner, aside from Trev's thing of just saying just walk away, I would say, right, well, clearly there's been a backlash. We need to retool it in a way that doesn't make us look like we screwed up.
In fact, I've just realised what might work is if they did what they did with Spartacus, because obviously we got a few Spartacus actors in the show,
yes. Mm-hmm.
And obviously after season 1, the main actor obviously was done ill and died. So they did they did season 2 in the hope that he'd recover. So they did like a backstory.
Yeah, they did Gannicus, didn't they?
Yeah, and that's something they could do to, I don't know,
go in a different direction.
Put some more groundwork in, so that by the time you get to season 3, you could then pick up where season 1 ends up, but have corrected something. I mean, I quite like Jack's idea. I mean, it's a little bit Twilight-y in the fact that, I mean, obviously how the big showdown at the end of the Twilight saga breaks down is sort of, obviously they have this vision of how it all goes down if they all get down to brass tacks and fight. So they go, oh no, we don't want to do that because we're vampires and we don't like dying. Which with vampires, I actually that's one of the things I actually like the Twilight Saga is the fact they didn't want to fight because there was this vision of what would happen, what was likely to happen. So that was very vampirish. But for elves and for Middle Earth, I'm not sure that I'd quite buy it. But anything to put it back to where it should be. I mean, I suppose there's probably a part of me that will go, I will give them that grace if they try to do it. I mean, more than anything, they got to have big fucking balls to sort of admit to it and then to make it right, and to have the ability to give them the opportunity. I suppose. I just don't think they'll do it.
I suspect that probably, if I was them, I would be in negotiations with a decent showrunner and and somebody who can sort of add a bit of weight and heft to it and give it a different polish and a different direction, because you can do that with the season 2. They should be able to do that. They probably won't, but they should be able to.
Why do series now, modern series, Game of Thrones did this a lot, they change directors for episodes? And they're like, we've got this person in to direct this episode. Why not?
Well, the reason is it's because they're often made at the same time for cost purposes. So they'll be filming one bit somewhere else, another bit somewhere else. So they need to have multiple directors. They don't literally film them sequentially.
I just think for most shows, it has some continuity and it doesn't feel like it's being made by different people, whereas Rings of Power feels very, very disconnected from each sort of storyline, really. I mean,
it doesn't feel like some of these female characters are written by women. They feel like they've been written by men.
But I think I would say it is still, for me, a curate's egg for it. There is little bits to enjoy. For all the last episode we watched, I know that you guys felt it was an absolute travesty, but the fact we got more intrigue at least made me want to see a bit more of it, to see where it's heading. It may be heading in a terrible direction, so that's fair. But I'm still not turned off by it. When I think of other series that I just couldn't be bothered with past series 1 and 2, I think of the Beowulf Return to the Shieldlands, which I was so excited to see a Beowulf TV series. I thought, oh, this is going to be great. And oh dear me, it really just seemed to fail on every single level. That was a big disappointment to me. That was.
Yeah, I only watched one episode of that.
And it had a huge budget as well. That's the thing. It had a huge budget, as big as Game of Thrones and all the others. It had a big budget, but it just didn't. I think it just depends, where it goes, and sometimes these things do not work. But obviously, Amazon's thrown so much money at it; they will be finding ways to probably spend a bit more money, because they're not short of a bob or two.
There's just going to be spin-off films and more series coming off the back of this.
Yeah.
There absolutely will be, and each bit will just dilute it. I already sent you guys a screenshot today of somebody tweeting about the origin of Mithril as if it was fact.
Oh no!
And I was like, it's already begun. In less than 4 days, people who could have just Googled something and actually figured out the truth, or bought the book and had the book there forever to understand it, have now decided to just watch the series and start tweeting that as if that's law. And this is where the problems start. This is where the problems start with that sort of stuff, and that's why fan bases get so irate, because to them these scripts are sacred. These texts are sacred to them, and they are to me.
Do you think, Jack, it's possible? I mean, this is possible that that they may do a spin-off series that everyone thinks is going to be even worse, that might actually be better than what they've done. It might be some some animated series that we're all going to think is going to be absolute sort of dog shit will actually turn out to be better than Rings of Power. In the same way that the Star Wars sort of sequels and prequels have very mixed receptions, but then they did a TV series.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
And I'll hate all of it. And I'll hate all of it, because I don't watch any of the Star Wars stuff anymore, because it's just churned out on a conveyor belt. And that's what everything is now. It's churned out on a conveyor belt. I gave up after Endgame with Marvel Universe. I was like, okay, Endgame, the end of it. We're not going to watch any more superhero stuff. And then suddenly they flooded us with all this more superhero stuff. I was like, well, it's just crap green screen. I don't care anymore. You've had the Endgame. It's called Endgame. So I've just gave up on that. And Star Wars used to mean something like, oh, wow, we haven't had a Star Wars film in a decade. This is going to be good. and it got shit, and then they franchise the crap out of it, and then that's shit. And they'll do this with Rings of Power, with Lord of the Rings. They'll just start churning stuff out, and it won't be special anymore, and people won't get excited about it anymore because money. They just want the money. They just want the views, and that's what it's all about. They're just gonna take that, and they're just gonna destroy it. They'll just add more and more bits until eventually anybody that actually likes Lord of the Rings for what Tolkien wrote will just read the books. And I think that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go back to my books.
And I'm going to bring up memes again because we probably all see it on a regular basis. I read to my children each night. I read to them from the good book, the great book, and it's just like, what is your favourite part from the great book? It's when Frodo throws the ring for the fire. And that's, while that's a joke, it's a meme. That's how important Lord of the Rings is. That's how important Middle Earth is. It's just like it's on a level of, we can make a joke about the good book, which for other segments of society might mean a different book. But for a lot of people, Lord of the Rings is the good book. And Frodo throwing the ring into the fire, which is it's kind of the end game of what we're seeing the origins of, matters.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Well, let's hope by the end of series 1 we actually get to see a couple rings at the very least.
Well, I want to see Sauron. Come on. I want
Yeah.
to see Sauron. Absolutely. I want to see whatever he looks like, and also the fact that Adar doesn't like being called Sauron. It's just, so that was kind of interesting to see that. But we shall see where it goes.
Sauron will kill him.
I do want to see some sort of Sauron. I want to see some sort of background intrigue. He's
Nazgul, something like that.
Yeah, and I want to see the rings. Like I mentioned, the rings. They don't need all these side plots. But anyway, on that note,
come on, Jeff Bezos, show us your ring. It has a different sound to it, doesn't it?
I must say,
Jeff Bezos broke a promise to his son. He promised his son he wouldn't fuck this up.
Yeah.
I must say that Trevor was absolutely devastated by it, and Jack just up with life with Rings of Power. And I'm glad, Rich, that speaking of hope, speaking of Gondor, of Gondorian hope with you.
I shall light the beacons for the next episode.
Rich is our Sam. Rich is our Sam.
I can't carry you for you, Miss Frodo, but I can carry you.
Yes, I'm carrying the whole series on my back. That's it.
Positive spin.
So there you have it. That's our podcast for the Rings of Power. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too depressing. I must apologise. There was some mic issues, so I hope it wasn't too bad. My microphone was playing up. But anyway, I hope you like this video. Like it, subscribe and all that stuff. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a good week.